Hey, once again, it's Brother Teacher. Uh, I didn't quite express my views on the killing of another black man by a police officer last week, Friday night. That would have been June the 12th, 2020, last week in Atlanta, Georgia, uh, in the parking lot of a Wendy's restaurant. Most of you know the story, you have heard of the story. And basically, to recap from my viewpoint, my observation, and the information that has been provided to most of us by way of the media, is that there was a 27-year-old black man by the name of Rayshard Brooks. His daughter was having a birthday party slash celebration that he was to attend. And he was supposed to be getting together with her and her mom and family for her birthday celebration. At some point, he had been drinking. He had went to a local Wendy's restaurant. According to him, he was in the process of trying to order something for his wife or girlfriend, and she couldn't make up her mind. And he was sitting in the car in or nearby the Wendy's drive-thru, and after frustration over several minutes trying to decide what she wanted from the restaurant, and she couldn't make up her mind, according to Rayshard, at some point he fell asleep in the car. Someone saw him asleep and they called 911 and the police arrived. Two particular police officers on the scene tapped on the window. He exited the vehicle by their command. They began to question him. Approximately, and I did say approximately 20 minutes of conversation. He seemed to be very respectful, courteous to the police officer that was questioning him. And at no point did he ever display any violent tendencies, nor did he raise his voice in a way that was less than respectful and cordial in his tone. But at some point in time, the police officer questioning him asked him what he had to drink, and he told him 1.5 drinks of whatever it was that he mentioned from watching the video. But anyway, he asked Rayshard if he would submit to a breathalyzer, and ultimately he did. And the police officer determined that he had had too much to drink, and he began to seize Rayshard's arm in an attempt to arrest him. A struggle ensued. Rayshard, Mr. Brooks that is, began to resist. He and the two officers ended up on the ground. He got back to his feet and he secured one of the police officers' taser. Began to run across Wendy's restaurant's parking lot. He turned back and aimed the taser towards the rear of him, where the two police officers were in pursuit of him. At this point, Officer Rolfe pulled his firearm, his service weapon, and fired and shot Mr. Brooks in the back, killing him. Now, this has spawned additional protests right off of the backs of the other gentleman, George Floyd, being killed several weeks prior to, and his funeral being approximately 2 weeks before this incident in Atlanta. So needless to say, people were angry in Atlanta. In the vicinity of where it occurred, the Wendy's restaurant was set afire and basically burned up. So, what's the answer to black people being killed by police? Now, there are those that are probably watching me right now in this video that are probably cursing me the heck out, that are probably from the police society or organizations. But it's okay. But it does not make it right for any police officer to abuse their power in a non-violent fashion or situation and having a dead body at the end of one of the citizens. So it is interesting to me, and I'll probably say this many times, it is interesting to me how first of all, the police officer that shot and killed Rayshard Brooks was fired from the department immediately. Didn't take a week, didn't take several days, as in the Floyd case, where the police officer eventually had to turn himself in and he wasn't arrested right away. But this police officer was fired immediately. And to boot, the police chief resigned within that same 24-hour period. Is that not an admission of guilt? Is that not an admission that the police department is not what it should be? Is that not an admission that the police department perhaps has some institutionalized racism therein? Is that not an admission that the police department and the people that are higher uppers, if you will, upper echelon, know that there has been issues within the police ranks all along? And it was easier for the police chief to just simply resign. So I have seen some coverage and video where it is said by the lawyer for Officer Rolfe that he was responding because he felt that the surrounding individuals or people in that community or area were in danger of possibly being harmed by Mr. Brooks fleeing, and even his fellow officers and himself. And that is why he discharged his weapon, pointing at the only available target to him, which was Mr. Brooks' back. And this is exactly what he said. So he fired at him to prevent him from hurting someone else. Now, mind you, Officer Rolfe, he had already patted down Rayshard Brooks. They knew that he had no other weapons on him. The only thing that he had was a taser. And according to their law, tasers are not considered a lethal weapon because they use it on people all of the time. So what type of harm and or danger could the police officers on that particular call, Rolfe and what's his name, Devin Brosnan, what type of threat do they believe that Rayshard Brooks posed to them, or anyone else for that matter, when they used the exact taser that he took from them They use them on people all of the time, legally. So he posed no threat. There was no imminent danger to those police officers nor anyone else. And if the man had been inebriated, if he had already been drinking, he even begged them to let him walk home. He said he wouldn't even get in the car. He said he would walk home, and that his family member lived not too far from there, let him walk home. How is it that you would charge someone with DUI who wasn't even driving the vehicle in the first place? He was sitting in the car asleep. Now, sitting in the car asleep and taking a breathalyzer, saying, oh, okay, you've been drinking. But did you witness this man driving? He wasn't drinking and driving. Not at that point anyway. And if you asked him to move his vehicle out of the parking lane or out of the drive-through lane, you asked him to do that if that happened. But he wasn't drinking and driving. He was sitting in the vehicle. You did not witness that. So how is it? This is my question. How is it that a so-called, it wasn't a traffic stop per se, how is it that a questioning of one of the people who sleep in their vehicle turn up with them being dead at the end of the day? Having a conversation with him for about 20 minutes or so, he was totally coherent in what he was saying. He knew exactly what he was saying. And you can try to dress it up. You can try to create your own narrative. But the video speaks for itself. You never should have attempted to arrest this man. You should have allowed this man to go home like he asked you. I'll leave the car right here and I'll walk home. I'll walk to my relative's home. But instead, you decide to put your hands on me and arrest me for drinking under the influence, driving while under the influence when I was not even driving when you arrived at the restaurant. But I get shot in the back and killed, taken away from my family and my daughter, who was having a birthday celebration, who was expecting her father. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you apologize for that? What's the answer? There's always some damage control being done by police departments anytime they unlawfully kill a black man. First thing they want to do, and this happens all of the time in America, they go and look up your record so that they can try to dig up some dirt to try to make a case against you based on that initial stop or that initial charge that they have against you, so that they can paint the most ugly picture of you that they possibly can when it goes to court, if you were to try to defend yourself. Your Honor, this person has a past record, they have a felony in this, and they've done this and done that. That's exactly how they operate. That is their modus operandi, police departments. They've always done that. Always trying to paint this ugly picture of black people, or African Americans, if you will, in defense of themselves. But no one ever opens up their records to see that they have a history of abuse towards black folks. But it's a new day. We found that out with the murder of George Floyd. It is a new day. New day in the sense that a lot of police officers that have unlawfully killed black people / African Americans are being held accountable now. Even murders by police officers that have occurred before 2020, they're being investigated now. And some of those police officers are being brought up on charges now. It's about time. My question is, Why did it take so long? All of my white brothers and sisters is out here watching me right now. What took so long? Black folks have been complaining about police brutality against us forever. Nothing's ever been done. And it took George Floyd to make everyone's eyes open and see that this was just not some dream in the night. It was not just simply our imagination that black people were being killed in record numbers unlawfully by police officers that were white. And every time it went to court, the vast majority of them walked away, put on administrative leave, paid administrative leave, found not guilty. But now, it's a new day, as I said. Excuse me. We're not taking it anymore. The days of abusing black men in America and even in the world, those days are over. It just simply is. Those days are over. And let me make something perfectly clear. I've heard people say that there are a few bad apples in the police department when these cases surface about these police officers, like Walter Scott, who was shot in the back in South Carolina by a police officer, like the police officer that choked Eric Garner in New York some years ago, like the police officer that pulled up in Cleveland, Ohio, and killed a 12-year-old Tamir Rice some years ago, playing with a toy gun in the park. It's just a few bad apples. Are you serious? Can you really say that with a straight face, that there are just a few bad apples, when these killings are not happening in remote places in America? They're happening all over in every city, virtually, in America, all over America. It's not just a few bad apples, and you know it. It is institutionalized racism at the seat of it all. Institutionalized racism, and yes, you heard me say that. It is. It's been that way. Now, let me qualify that before I go. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Here's where we are. When police departments were originally, or the police department was originally created, it was a slave patrol during slavery times, and they were designed to go and gather up runaway slaves. That was the original police department. That was its job. Do you think that institution has really changed? Because that's the foundation of the police department. You can do the rest of the historical background and checking, doing your own due diligence in your leisure. But that's where police departments began, as slave patrols. Now, they have evolved over the years, and then there has been this protect and serve motto that you see on advertisements, you see on the police vehicles, many of them, to protect and serve. Who are they protecting and serving? It's not the community. It is only the rich corporations that they're protecting and serving. This is a fact. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. They protect the rich corporations, the banks, the large supermarkets, the large industries. They protect them. Small communities, minority communities, black communities, they're not there to protect them. They have been there to tyrannize the poor, the working poor, and to extort money for the system from those same people. That's the purpose of the police department. That's why they carry these citation books, where they write these tickets and take money from your family for infractions, for breaking the policies of the system, not the law. Because there's only two crimes that you can actually commit as it relates to law. You can do this on your own as well. When you harm another human being, or you steal or destroy someone else's property, those are only two crimes that exist. It's on the books. Look it up. Jaywalking is not a crime. Driving through a stoplight, driving through a stop sign is not a crime. It's not. If you have not harmed anyone, it's not a crime. Let me qualify that. If you harm someone or property, we're not talking about what could happen. If you haven't harmed another human being and you have not harmed anyone's property, it's not a crime. Am I encouraging people to drive through stop signs and stop lights? No, I'm not. Am I encouraging someone to walk against the light or jaywalk? No, I'm not. We are intelligent human beings. We need to be able to make our own decisions intellectually and not be punished just because we break a policy. But they don't want to give us credit for being intelligent. They want to tell us what the rules are, and if you go against the rules, then you're going to pay financially and possibly with jail time. So, why is it that so many black people have died at the hands of police officers and nothing has ever been done? And why have we not had enough police officers stand up against it? Let that marinate in your mind for a moment. Police officers in this particular instance where George Floyd was killed, many of them stood up and spoke against it. Not enough, but many have spoken against it. Hollywood celebrities have spoken against it. Sports individuals have spoken up against it. Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, and then some. Comedians have spoken up against it. And the list goes on and on. So, why so long? Why did it take so long for you to acknowledge, all of you mayors, you governors, you politicians, you lawmakers, you law enforcers, why did it take so long for you to speak out against what you knew existed all along? This is not new. Racism cannot be legislated. You cannot say, oh, we're going to teach our police officers some new training. How much training can you give someone who's racist? Is that going to change how they feel about someone who has a different color skin than they? It's not. Racism is inbred. It is something that's deeply woven into the fabric of America. That's only going to take God to change that heart of someone like that. Not legislation. Oh, we're going to make a rule if you're a racist, well, you can't change that. You can't change people's hatred towards other people. But what you can do is legislate strict, deliberate punishments for any police officer that harasses, that physically abuses, to include raping black women in exchange for them not going to jail. That's happened. To include taking briberies for the same reason, and police officers have done that. To include police officers stealing property from the people. They've done that. To include, especially, last but not least, taking the life of another human being and taking them away from their families without any repercussions, without any punishment whatsoever. These things have to change. And they should get prison, not just simply jail time, county. They should get prison or the death penalty for taking a life. It's really that simple. Prison or the death penalty. And when you start enacting those laws, then things will truly change. Then and only then. So what happened to Rayshard Brooks here recently in Atlanta should have never happened. Just like all of the other black people who have been killed at the hand and by the hand of white police officers. Never should have happened. I'm so happy to see that the protests have brought out our white brothers and sisters in strong numbers, not only in America, but across the world now. Now someone is paying attention. So, what happened to Rayshard Brooks a week ago, we shouldn't settle for, oh, the police officer saying, oh, my life was in danger. It wasn't. No one's life was in danger but Rayshard Brooks, because we can see that he lost his life by the hand of former officer Rolfe. That was it, and that was all. This behavior from these police officers, and I will say this, and I've said it before I depart, but I have to say this. There are some wonderful police officers who had, when they joined the forces, the best intentions in the world. They had the desire to better their lives and try to serve the community, because that's the way it was pictured to them. That's the way it was presented to them, that the police department is here to serve the community. But once they became police officers, they found out that it was different. These are the secrets, and these are the things that they will never tell the general public. All police officers know what the fabric of the police department is, whether they speak about it or not. Some of them are in there to do the right thing, but there's some that want to do the wrong thing. That was it, and that was all.